August 6, 1945. A single American B-29 bomber appeared over Hiroshima, Japan. It dropped one bomb. Just one. The explosion vaporized 80,000 people instantly. The mushroom cloud rose 40,000 feet into the sky. The blast was visible from 250 miles away. In Tokyo, Japanese High Command received the reports and couldn't believe them. One bomb? Impossible. It must be exaggeration. Maybe a lucky hit on an ammunition depot. Maybe mass hysteria. 3 days later, another B-29. Another city. Another single bomb. Nagasaki ceased to exist in an instant. In the Imperial Palace, the Supreme Council for the Direction of the War gathered in emergency session. These were the men who had led Japan into war, who had conquered an empire, who had believed the Japanese spirit could overcome American material power. And now they finally understood. They had miscalculated. Badly. Catastrophically. One member of the council, Navy Minister Mitsumasa Yonai, said what everyone was thinking. We always knew the Americans were powerful. We thought we understood what that meant. We were wrong. We understood nothing. This is the untold story of when Japanese High Command finally grasped the true scale of American industrial and technological power. The moments of realization that came too late. The intelligence reports they ignored. The warnings they dismissed. And the devastating wake-up calls that forced them to confront a terrible truth. They had started a war. They could never win. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. For Japanese High Command, this was the culmination of years of planning. A brilliant surprise attack that crippled the American Pacific Fleet. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, who had planned the attack, understood its limitations. He had studied in America. He knew American industrial capacity. When staff officers congratulated him on the success of Pearl Harbor, Yamamoto didn't celebrate. He said, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." His staff thought he was being modest. They had just destroyed America's battleship fleet. They had bought Japan time to consolidate its conquests. Surely America would negotiate rather than fight a long, costly war across the Pacific. But Yamamoto knew better. He had seen American factories. He had driven across American highways. He had watched American oil fields and steel mills. He understood what his fellow officers didn't. Japan had just attacked the largest industrial power in human history, and that power was about to turn its full attention to destroying Japan. In the weeks after Pearl Harbor, Japanese High Command received intelligence reports about American industrial mobilization. The reports seemed impossible, exaggerated, propaganda designed to demoralize Japanese planners. The reports said America was converting automobile factories to aircraft production, that they were building new shipyards, that they planned to produce tens of thousands of aircraft per year, hundreds of ships. Japanese officers laughed. These numbers were absurd. No nation could produce on that scale. Japan's entire aircraft industry produced about 5,000 planes per year. America was claiming they would produce 50,000. Impossible. One intelligence officer wrote in his report, "American claims of production capacity are clearly inflated for propaganda purposes. Real production is likely 1/10 of claimed figures." Japanese High Command based their strategy on this assumption. They believed they had a window of perhaps 2 years before America could rebuild its fleet and mount a serious counteroffensive. 2 years to consolidate the empire. 2 years to build impregnable defenses. 2 years to make the cost of attacking Japan so high that America would negotiate. They were wrong. Catastrophically wrong. The first hint came at Midway in June 1942. Just 6 months after Pearl Harbor, the U.S. Navy met the Japanese fleet with 4 aircraft carriers. Japan lost 4 carriers, hundreds of experienced pilots, and most importantly, lost the strategic initiative. But what shocked Japanese commanders wasn't just the defeat. It was the speed of American recovery. At Pearl Harbor, the Americans had lost or damaged 8 battleships. How did they have 4 fleet carriers ready for combat just 6 months later? The answer was simple. Those carriers hadn't been built after Pearl Harbor. They were already under construction. America had been preparing for war even before it started, and the carriers being built now would arrive in even greater numbers. After Midway, Japanese High Command began receiving more detailed intelligence about American production. Aircraft factories in California, Michigan, Texas, Washington. Shipyards in Virginia, Massachusetts, California, Washington. Tank factories, artillery foundries, ammunition plants. The scale was staggering. In 1942 alone, America produced 47,836 aircraft, 24,000 tanks, 17,000 artillery pieces, 4 million tons of ammunition. For comparison, in 1942, Japan produced 8,861 aircraft, 1,191 tanks, 2,500 artillery pieces, unknown ammunition, but far less than America. But Japanese High Command still didn't fully grasp what these numbers meant. Numbers on paper are abstract. They needed to see the results in combat to understand. At Guadalcanal, they started to understand. The campaign for Guadalcanal lasted from August 1942 to February 1943. For Japan, it was a grinding war of attrition. They sent reinforcements, men, supplies, ammunition in small convoys that ran at night to avoid American air attack. These Tokyo Express runs delivered hundreds of troops at a time. The Americans. They landed 60,000 troops in the first month. Then more kept coming. Constant resupply. Mountains of ammunition. Fuel, food, medical supplies. Replacement aircraft arriving faster than they were being shot down. Japanese troops on Guadalcanal began writing letters home describing what they faced. Not letters about brave American soldiers or clever tactics. Letters about stuff, mountains of stuff. The Americans have unlimited ammunition. They fire artillery constantly, hour after hour. We must conserve every round. They waste bullets. When we attack at night, they fill the jungle with machine gun fire. They don't aim. They don't need to. They have so much ammunition they can afford to spray bullets everywhere. Another letter. We are starving. Rice runs low. Many men have dysentery. We eat leaves and roots. The Americans? We found their camp after they abandoned it. They left behind food, canned meat, chocolate, cigarettes. They left behind more food than our entire company has eaten in a month. They left it behind because carrying it wasn't worth the effort. These letters reached Tokyo. Japanese High Command read them with growing concern. The reports described an enemy that didn't fight like any enemy Japan had faced before. Chinese armies collapsed when their supply lines were cut. British forces surrendered when supplies ran low. But Americans? They seemed to have infinite supplies. General Hitoshi Imamura, commander of Japanese forces in the Southeast Pacific, wrote to Tokyo, "We are not fighting an army. We are fighting an economic system. Every American soldier is backed by American industry. They have more of everything: planes, ships, bullets, food, fuel. We cannot win a war of attrition against an opponent with unlimited resources." But Japanese High Command still believed they could win through superior fighting spirit. American material advantage could be overcome by Japanese willingness to die. One Japanese soldier willing to sacrifice himself could kill many Americans who wanted to live. This belief persisted through 1943 and into 1944, even as American forces advanced across the Pacific, even as more Japanese positions fell, even as the numbers became increasingly one-sided. Then came the Marianas Campaign in mid-1944, and Japanese High Command began to truly understand. The Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944 was called the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot by American pilots. In one day of air combat, American carrier pilots shot down over 350 Japanese aircraft while losing only 30 of their own. But what shocked Japanese commanders wasn't just the kill ratio. It was what happened next. The Americans lost 30 aircraft. The next day, 30 replacement aircraft arrived from escort carriers. Every loss was immediately replaced. The American carrier force was just as strong after the battle as before it. Japan lost 350 aircraft and over 200 trained pilots. Those losses were irreplaceable. The pilots were dead. The planes couldn't be replaced quickly. And even if new planes could be built, there weren't enough trained pilots to fly them. Admiral Ozawa, commanding the Japanese carriers, sent a report to Tokyo. We achieved tactical surprise and struck first. We had numerical advantage in some phases of the battle. But we lost catastrophically. The Americans have so many aircraft that our victories don't matter. We can shoot down 10 of their planes and they send 20 more. We lose 10 planes and we cannot replace them. This is not a battle we can win. Then came the bombing campaigns. And Japanese High Command's understanding of American power became brutally clear. B-29. Superfortress bombers began appearing over Japan in late 1944. These aircraft were enormous. Each one weighed 120,000 pounds, fully loaded. They flew at altitudes where Japanese fighters struggled to intercept them. They carried 5 tons of bombs per aircraft. And they came in fleets, dozens of bombers, then hundreds. Night after night after night, Japanese cities began burning. Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, Kobe, Yokohama. Not from high explosive bombs, but from incendiaries. Fire bombs that created firestorms consuming entire districts. The March 9th, 1945. Firebombing of Tokyo killed over 100,000 people in one night, more than either atomic bomb would kill. 16 square miles of Tokyo burned completely. Japanese High Command gathered to assess the damage and plan their response. But what could they do? They couldn't stop the raids. Japanese fighters shot down some B-29S, but more kept coming. Anti-aircraft fire was ineffective at the altitudes B-29S flew. Navy Minister Yonai asked the question everyone was thinking. Where are all these aircraft coming from? We've shot down over 500 American bombers, yet more keep arriving. How many do they have? The intelligence officer presented the latest estimates. American production is approximately 1,000 B-29 bombers per month, plus 2,000 other aircraft types per month. Silence in the room. Then denial. It can't be correct. His numbers are impossible. But they weren't impossible. They were real. America's aircraft industry was producing over 3,000 aircraft per month by 1945. The B-29S bombing Japan were being replaced faster than Japan could shoot them down. Prime Minister Kantaro Suzuki, who took office in April 1945, privately admitted, "We cannot win. We cannot even slow them down. The Americans have unlimited everything. Unlimited planes, unlimited bombs, unlimited fuel, unlimited will. We are fighting a power beyond our comprehension." But admitting this publicly was impossible. The military government couldn't surrender without appearing weak, so they prepared for Operation Ketsugo, the defense of the Japanese home islands. The plan was desperate. Every Japanese civilian would be mobilized. Women and children would fight with bamboo spears if necessary. Kamikaze attacks would be intensified. Japan would make invasion so costly that America would negotiate rather than accept millions of casualties. But privately, Japanese commanders knew it wouldn't work. American power was simply too overwhelming. Admiral Soemu Toyoda, chief of the Naval General Staff, wrote in his diary, "We are planning to fight the invasion with bamboo spears and suicide attacks. The Americans will come with 10,000 aircraft, 1,000 ships, and unlimited ammunition. Our plan is madness, but we cannot say this aloud." Then came August 6th. Hiroshima, 1 bomb, 1 city destroyed. Japanese High Command received the reports and held an emergency meeting. The initial reaction was disbelief. 1 bomb couldn't destroy an entire city. It must be exaggeration or mass panic. But then more reports came in. Detailed reports. Eyewitness accounts. The descriptions were consistent. A single massive explosion. A flash of light, brighter than the sun. A mushroom cloud reaching into the stratosphere. Everything within 2 miles of the detonation point simply gone. General Korechika Anami, the war minister, read the reports and said, "If this is true, we must reconsider everything. A weapon that can destroy a city with 1 bomb changes all calculations." But hardliners in the military argued this might be propaganda. Maybe it was a lucky hit on ammunition storage. Maybe the Americans only had 1 such bomb and had used it already. Then came August 9th, Nagasaki, another single bomb, another city destroyed. Now there was no denying it. The Americans had multiple atomic bombs. They could destroy Japanese cities one at a time, day after day, without risking a single soldier. The Supreme Council met in emergency session. Emperor Hirohito attended, highly unusual for a sitting monarch. The debate was fierce. Hardline military officers wanted to continue fighting. We can still make invasion costly. We can defend the homeland. But for the first time, voices of surrender were louder. Navy Minister Yonai spoke. Defend against what? If they have 10 such bombs, they can destroy our 10 largest cities. If they have 20, they can destroy 20 cities. They don't need to invade. They can simply erase Japan from existence, one city at a time. Admiral Toyoda added, we have been fighting American power for 4 years. We thought we understood what we faced, but we understood nothing. They have factories that produce aircraft faster than we can shoot them down. They have shipyards that produce carriers faster than we can sink them. They have industrial capacity beyond our comprehension. And now they have weapons that can destroy cities with single bombs. We are not fighting a nation. We are fighting the future itself. And the future cannot be defeated with courage or spirit. General Yoshijiro Umezu, Army Chief of Staff, who had been a hardliner throughout the war, finally spoke. I have spent my entire career believing that Japanese spirit and determination could overcome material disadvantage. I believed we could defeat an enemy that had more supplies by having more courage. But you cannot fight physics with courage. These atomic weapons are physics. One bomb, one city. No amount of fighting spirit changes that equation. The most powerful statement came from Prime Minister Suzuki. We started this war because we believed we could seize resources quickly and establish defenses that would make invasion too costly for America to pursue. We believed American civilians were soft and wouldn't support a long war. We believed American industry, while large, could be matched by Japanese discipline and efficiency. Every single assumption was wrong, he continued. They were not soft. They mobilized completely for war. Their industry didn't match ours. It dwarfed us beyond comprehension. And now they have shown us weapons we didn't even know were possible. Gentlemen, we didn't just lose this war. We never had any chance of winning it. We simply didn't understand who we were fighting. Emperor Hirohito, who rarely spoke at these meetings, said, the war must end. If it continues, the Japanese nation will be destroyed completely. The Americans have shown they can destroy our cities at will. They will not stop. We must bear the unbearable and surrender. On August 15th, 1945, Emperor Hirohito's voice was broadcast over radio for the first time in Japanese history. His surrender speech didn't focus on military defeat or lost battles. Instead, he spoke of a new and most cruel bomb. The enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb, the power of which to do damage is indeed incalculable, taking the toll of many innocent lives. Should we continue to fight, it would not only result in an ultimate collapse and obliteration of the Japanese nation, but also it would lead to the total extinction of human civilization. It was an admission that Japan had been fighting something they never understood, a power beyond their comprehension. After the war, during the Tokyo War crimes trials, Japanese military leaders were interviewed extensively about their wartime decision-making. Many were asked, when did you realize Japan couldn't win? Admiral Toyoda answered, I knew we couldn't win after Midway. We had lost the strategic initiative and faced an enemy with superior resources. But I couldn't say this. The military government would have considered such defeatism as treason. General Anami's chief of staff, who survived the war, said, we received intelligence reports throughout 1942 and 1943 showing that American production exceeded our estimates by factors of 5 or 10. We didn't believe these reports. We thought they were propaganda. American production really was that high. We simply couldn't conceive of an economy that productive. Former Prime Minister Hideki Tojo, who led Japan through much of the war, was asked at his trial, when did you understand you couldn't defeat America? His answer was stunning. I understood before the war started. Everyone who studied the matter understood. America's economy was 10 times larger than Japan's. Their oil production was 100 times larger. Their steel production was 5 times larger. Their industrial capacity was overwhelming. But we believed we had to believe that fighting spirit could overcome material disadvantage. We were wrong. The prosecutor asked, if you knew you couldn't win, why did you start the war? Tojo's answer, because the alternative was surrender without fighting. The oil embargo meant Japan's economy would collapse within 2 years. We faced a choice: certain slow strangulation, or a war we probably couldn't win but might negotiate favorable terms in. We chose war. In retrospect, it was madness. Perhaps the most revealing interviews were with Japanese intelligence officers who had estimated American capabilities before and during the war. One officer admitted, "Our estimates of American aircraft production in 1942 were 15,000 planes per year. We thought we were being generous with this estimate. The actual figure was 47,000. We underestimated by a factor of 3. When we received reports of actual production, we dismissed them as propaganda because the numbers seemed impossible." Another intelligence officer said, "We knew America had more industry, but we thought industry meant factories that could be destroyed by bombing. We didn't understand that American industry was distributed across an entire continent. You can't bomb Seattle and cripple American aircraft production because there are factories in California, Michigan, Texas, and Washington. America's industrial capacity was essentially invulnerable to anything we could do." The atomic bombs became the ultimate symbol of how badly Japan had miscalculated. These weren't just powerful weapons. They represented technological and scientific capability that Japan hadn't even known was possible. After the war, Japanese scientists who had worked on Japan's own failed atomic program were interviewed. One physicist said, "We knew atomic weapons were theoretically possible, but we estimated it would require 10 years of research and industrial capacity far beyond what Japan possessed. We never imagined America could develop such weapons during wartime while simultaneously fighting a two-front war and outproducing US in conventional weapons by factors of 10. The scale of American scientific and industrial mobilization was beyond anything we thought possible, a question historians still debate. Could Japanese leaders have understood American power earlier and avoided the war entirely? Some argue yes. Yamamoto understood. He warned his colleagues. There were intelligence reports showing American industrial capacity. The information was available. Others argue no. Japanese military culture made it impossible to advocate for surrender or negotiation without appearing cowardly. Officers who suggested Japan couldn't defeat America were sidelined or accused of defeatism. The system made rational assessment impossible. But what's clear is this. By the time Japanese high command truly understood American power, August 1945, millions were dead. Japan was in ruins, and 2 cities had been erased by weapons that represented a new age of warfare. The final statistics tell the story of the mismatch. Total aircraft production, WWII. USA, 300,317. Japan, 76,320. Total naval tonnage produced. USA, 5,200,000 tons. Japan, 1 million tons. Total tanks produced. USA, 88,410. Japan, 6,450. Oil production, 1941. USA, 1.4 billion barrels. Japan, 0 barrels, entirely dependent on imports. Steel production, 1941. USA, 75 million tons. Japan, 6.8 million tons. Japan entered a war against a nation that could produce 5 times more steel, produce 13 times more oil, all of it, and build 4 times more aircraft. And Japan's strategy was to win through fighting spirit. It wasn't just optimistic, it was delusional. Admiral Yamamoto's words after Pearl Harbor proved prophetic. "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." The sleeping giant woke up. And Japanese high command spent 4 years slowly, painfully realizing they had made the worst strategic miscalculation in military history. By August 1945, they finally understood. They understood that American power wasn't just larger than they'd thought. It was different in kind, not just degree. It was industrial capacity they couldn't match, technological advancement they couldn't counter, and societal mobilization they couldn't conceive. Prime Minister Suzuki's words summarized it best. "We didn't just lose this war. We never had any chance of winning it. We simply didn't understand who we were fighting." And when they finally understood, when the atomic bombs made American power undeniable and inarguable, it was far, far too late. The war was over. Japan was in ruins. And the lesson had been learned. at the cost of millions of lives. Japanese High Command entered World War II, believing in the power of spirit over material. They exited World War II, understanding that in modern warfare, industrial capacity is destiny, and they had challenged the greatest industrial power in human history. It was never a fair fight. It was never even close. It just took 4 years and 2 atomic bombs for everyone to finally accept what Admiral Yamamoto knew on December 7th, 1941. Japan had awakened a sleeping giant, and that giant was unstoppable.